let's get into a topic that you guys talk a lot about. The beautiful thing about Prostatis and here at the Savvy Investor Radio is that you guys have the world at your fingertips to help us with whatever problem we're going to come to you with, financially speaking. And I'm sure that when you guys mention the word annuity as a possible solution to people, they just lose it because of things that they may have heard or, whatever preconceived notion that they may have. So wanted to do this. I wanted to rattle off a list of 8 reasons why folks should consider annuities. And this is by no means a sales pitch. It's just to give you guys information on reasons why you should at least consider an annuity. This is according to Think Advisor. Then I want to get your thoughts on this. So reasons for annuities: additional income in old age, guaranteed lifetime income, looking for higher interest rates, tax-deferred funds beyond 401ks and IRAs, protection against market downturns, a tax-free income stream, and the ability to customize the annuities. And last here on the list is long-term care protection. You guys have a list of 3 based on that. What do we need to know about? What are some highlights here?
So Sam's going to get into in a minute kind of what we think are the top 3 reasons why people should consider annuities. But I also kind of want to talk about why people don't like annuities to begin with. If you Google annuities, the first article that pops up is like why you shouldn't own an annuity and why. And so you just have to be careful when you're doing your research on that, because annuities are good tools for very specific reasons inside your financial plan. And for some people it makes sense, and for some people it doesn't. But basically people think annuities are bad. One, because back in the day when they sold variable annuities, in the 80s and 90s, they went up and down like the market, just like having your money in a brokerage account. But you were paying an exuberant amount of fees because you're paying M&E expenses, annual policy costs. Each fund that you owned had a fee. And so when you look at them and you actually peel the cover off of it, you're paying about somewhere between 3.5% to 5% in fees.
Okay. That's a lot. That's considered a lot.
Yes. Yeah. So, the stock market over time averages somewhere between 6 and 6.5%. So if you're only making 6.5% and you're paying 5% fees, well, obviously that's a bad investment, right? So that's one preconceived notion with variable annuities. Well, variable annuities are not basically, people still sell them, but they're basically different. But that's not what Sam and I use as far as a solution for annuities. Now, on top of that, people think, well, if I buy an annuity, then that lump sum of money goes away and I convert it into an income stream, because they just associate that word annuity with income. Well, there are a lot of different, like this list says, reasons to use annuities and benefits to using annuities. Not all annuities produce an income stream, and not all annuities take away the actual account value to provide income. So I know a lot of federal employees, just to touch on this, they get quotes from their OPM and TSP basically saying, well, if you turned your whole TSP into an annuity, it would provide, $3,000 a month in income. That's a very specific type of annuity where you put the money in, you get income, and then that lump sum value goes away. So for most people, that isn't a good solution, because let's say you get 3 years worth of payments and you get, you pass away. Well, then your whole life savings that you'd put in that annuity goes away. So annuities are specific for very specific reasons, but here at Prostatis, Sam's going to highlight some of the reasons why we think annuities are a good fit for certain situations.
So rolling back to the list that Mike went over, he had said 8 different things, and I'm just going to tell you guys the top 3 reasons that we use annuities. Those are going to be income producing, bond replacements with protection against down markets, and then tax deferred or tax-free for a certain stream of income. Income. We really use those to create income for people in retirement. A lot of people, they have pensions, Social Security, but based on their expenses, they may have a gap within their income. So how do you fill that gap? Well, this is a tool that we use where you put a lump sum of money into an annuity. It produces income from it, basically like a pension. And then we actually use this one rider called a guaranteed lifetime income rider. Once the account reaches 0, because you're pulling money from it every time you take a distribution with this rider, once it reaches 0, it actually will continue to pay out until you or your spouse die. So it's a great tool to use if you're really trying to fill that income gap. But again, this type of annuity is for people that are needing to gap income, which is totally different from an annuity that we're looking at protection against the down market or wanting to have growth. So really the differential is income versus growth. Well, the growth side of the annuities that we use are going to be things like bond replacements, where we're protecting against the market. A lot of people, when they have their portfolio, they're in 80-20, so 80% in equities, 20% in bonds. We've seen over the last, 25, 30 years, that bond markets aren't really the place to go anymore. We've seen on 3 different occasions that bond markets have dropped 10 to 15%, especially in 2022. There was nowhere to hide. Equities were down and bond markets were down. So we took that as, okay, well, where else can we put that money where you're still getting that growth, but you're still having that downside protection? And we use an annuity called a fixed index annuity that allows us to put money into an annuity. It has a participation of whatever the underlying index is. But if the markets are down, negative, you get your money back, you get your principal back. But it's still allowing you to participate in that growth while protecting from the downside. So again, there are those 2 different types of annuities, income producing versus growth, and each one of those are for specific situations. And then on top of that, we use annuities as a tax bucket. So there's Roth annuities that we can use for tax deferred growth as long as it's been in there for the 5 years. But there's also tax deferred, just like a 401k. So really, when we're looking at purchasing annuities for our clients, which sometimes we don't, it's really dependent upon what the client needs. But we will, when you come in, if you come into our office, we sit you down and we ask you, what are your goals and objectives? What's your risk tolerance? And from there, if an annuity works, we'll see where you fit in the different options. But there are, again, we repeat this multiple times in every conversation about annuities. It's not for everyone.
What's the general sentiment when people come in to see you and you bring up the word annuity?
People are generally miseducated on annuities. So when we sit down and kind of go over a plan, and if we think an annuity makes sense for guaranteed lifetime income, we present that as an option along with other options on how to produce income. With an annuity, though, you're transferring the risk to an insurance company, so it's usually a little bit cheaper to provide income through an annuity rather than your own portfolio or a preferred stock portfolio.
So are the folks kind of holding their breath until you give them the plan, hoping that you guys don't put hey, listen, we're not going to offer you an annuity. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's not the case. I mean, it could be a great thing for you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then, there's also situations, annuities are really a Swiss Army knife. There's an annuity out there for every type of goal, whether it's to have an increased death benefit with no risk. There's an annuity out there for that. There's an annuity out there for guaranteed lifetime income. There's an annuity out there for upside growth, no downside risk. So it really depends on, again, coming back to what your goals are and what investments that we're going to use to fund those goals. So we always say that your investments should be determined by your goals, not your goals determined by your investments.
The dog wags the tail does not wag the dog. We say it every day.
And then we also have clients that come into the office here in Hanover that, have annuities because they purchased them, 10, 15 years ago, because at the time, it made sense and they thought they were going to need the income. They worked more years than they thought. So we also actually prepare exit strategies for people with annuities, the most tax.
So there is help for them as well.
Absolutely. And that's what's so big about working with planners like Sam and myself. We provide solutions for investments that you have that maybe don't make sense anymore. We provide solutions for investments that we think that you need to, meet your goals. And then, there's some people out there with income annuities where it may make sense just to turn on the income stream to fund a long-term care policy. Because at that point, long-term care is a goal, later in retirement. So there's all these different solutions out here, and annuities may or may not be the one for you, but there's no way of knowing unless you sit down with a financial planner and go through a full plan. If you're feeling like, annuities may or may not be the solution for you and you just want to have an analysis of your income and your tax planning, give us a call, 866-597-1040. Again, 866-597-1040, or click on the SavvyInvestorRadio.com income analyzer, and that'll take you to a link for a 15-minute phone conversation to get the ball rolling.
I love it. Don't stress out about it is what I just wrote down. Because if you have a question, they're more than happy to answer that and point you in the right direction. 866-597-1040 and online at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. It's complimentary. You can do that right now. 866-597-1040 and online at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. Click on the Income Analyzer button, front page, to schedule a quick 15-minute phone conversation, and you can do that today.